things with a bow.
Ooh. Bow hunter. What's going on,
They do not
chat?
care what level they are, though.
Well, that's great.
That's bad. That's a bad layout.
What's up, Goblin Gaming? What's going on? We also, Michael W. hitting the membership over here on the YouTube side of things. For those of you on YouTube, if you want to go hit that Twitch link right now, we're going to be talking about the drops campaign, but I would be recommending lurking on it because to get everything on this drops campaign, Chris, how many hours do you think somebody has to lurk on the stream for this new season 1 drop campaign? What's your best guess?
How long does it run? A week?
Runs to May the 4th. Be with
you. So it runs for a full month. So everybody's going to want to be able to get the drops within 24 hours because it has 31 days. So I would guess.
Don't look at chat.
8 hours.
20 hours. Chat has it right. Oh, baby.
Now, hold on. So when Guild Wars did their big drop campaign, the first reward was at like 30 minutes. And then you had to accept it before moving to the next reward. And then there was one for like an hour. And then you had to accept it before you moved on to the next reward. And so if you were going to lurk, the first day you lurked, you'd get the 30-minute reward, even though your computer was like, people were like, oh, I like went to work and left my computer on all day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not what they're trying to reward. So it was broken into like 5 milestones. So even though it was only like 6 hours total or something, it was like 5 separate streams if you're like truly AFK. Have they done that here?
So in this case, like chat's confirming as well, like this is interesting. So it's like there's 5 pieces. You get 1 piece per every 4 hours. You watch all 20 hours, you get all 5 pieces. Does not seem to have to be like, oh, confirm this drop. So it literally could be Brian's streaming tonight, guys. Just come and hang out.
You can just hang out. Second tab.
Yeah, just hang out.
Second tab on your phone.
Tab. We're perfect second tab people.
You're somebody who, like, I don't know, you like are doing dishes all day for some reason because you got like the world's largest pile of dirty dishes. Your hands are wet. We're on the phone. Don't even worry about it. You don't need to reach out with those wet hands and touch your phone. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. But
excellent.
As part of the first topic, I think we're going to jump in. Today's show, we're going to be talking about y'all's comments, especially as it relates to previous videos, especially Final Fantasy XIV's live letter. But we'll start off in New World because we're playing New World. Today is season 1. After a 1-week delay, you watched the dev Q&A, and Scott sat down and had I think a very heartfelt kind of message at the start of the video. Somebody who was actively like following. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is a really good moment for him to come out and, apologize for like missing by a week. How did you, as a New World player, but not necessarily as like weirdly into it as I am, how did that resonate with you?
I think it was appropriate. I think he handled it very well. It came out, it felt, not every dev has this capability, but it felt very unscripted. So like, if you don't have it, don't do it. But it felt very unscripted and felt very real. And so you could kind of see him try to pick his word choice very carefully, but very authentically. And it really presented just like, we had a crappy situation. Mm-hmm. We could ship a product that was not the caliber we expected. And here's why. Mm-hmm. Pretty transparent. Or we could delay a product and we understand what that costs as far as like community trust. Yeah. And, maybe you took time off work last week, or you had a light week planned at work this week and you don't this week. And you're like, ugh.
Thankfully, as a fan of New World, I don't do that. I'm like, well, we'll see, because like, and that's the one miss that I think I made. And again, like, I'm kind of trying to balance this software dev, what I read, because it's not always going to be 100% accurate, but I do get a really strong read, being that I work in development. I can start to understand things that are being kind of said maybe between the lines, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a guarantee. And so the other side is the content creator in me, and I don't want to necessarily sensationalize my speculation, right? Because it's like the Wednesday before, like the patch was supposed to go live, I'm like, it's weirdly quiet. Like, it's weirdly quiet. That tells me everybody's nose down. They've discovered something and they're working on it. But I didn't make a video, didn't make a post about it, because I didn't want to make it a thing. Like, New World already has enough of that. Like we already have enough of that. So I was like, I'm just gonna keep quiet. They come out Saturday and delay it. And I was like, dadgummit, I wish I at least made a post to kind of highlight, like, yeah, guys, like I was feeling this. Missing by a week is tough. Scott comes out and puts out a good video, and he's kind of damned if he does and damned if he doesn't in that situation, because the thing that I want now that it's here and now that he's come out and talked about it, like I still want that at the beginning of it, but at the beginning of it, it only makes it worse because they haven't fixed it. They don't know exactly when it's happening. And I think the miss that, in that case was the date kept slipping on the official forms. So that was multiple points of trust loss that happened all the way up to today, as opposed to saying, coming out, guys, we found an issue. The next update from us is when we're convinced as to the date, but they kept updating it on the forums, which gets picked up and reported, which changes, which then says what's going on. And thankfully, Scott, like the solution is get the content out. Scott comes out and talks to the community about what happened, and it was his call. And I think it's the right call, because you don't want to sit here. I think the bigger cost is putting out a patch and all of a sudden it's just like you're not getting any of your stuff. Like nothing's working. What is happening? And that, I think, continues to have a harder time. So ideally, the best way from this is they don't have another miss on a season, right? Like that's the best way, I think, that they can come out of this and say, listen, we learned a lot. We discovered these things as a part of our due diligence. They didn't show up earlier. They do now. And I can tell you, as a dev, I work in those situations all the time. Like I'm right now, not at work, but like as I jumped from work to lunch for the podcast, like I am randomly getting an identity, like authentication error on the API, and it's only affecting me. And I can tell you that's incredibly frustrating, because you have to you got to stop what you're doing. You got to focus in on this. And then ultimately what ends up probably going to pan out is that there was some issue that wasn't even in my body, like wasn't even anything. It was just something that I had no control over. So I keep reporting it to IT so they can investigate. And that's just sometimes the nature of it. So development in and of itself, like I have a lot of respect for the team and what they do and the energy that they bring. And this, I felt like it was a really kind of a bummer of a miss. But now that it's actually here, like I think that those feelings will fade away as people get into the content and enjoy the content and kind of
smooth.
Yeah. And so far, like, have you had any server issues today?
I'm getting a couple little frame drops here and there that I don't typically get. Pretty smooth for a patch day. Somebody in chat said that a friend of theirs said that they lost a sword through gear sets. I don't know if there's some fringe bugs there, and where that ends up going, and is it recoverable and all that. And like, I don't know if that's something that's happening with like the additional gear sets, because like I'm only operating on 2 gear sets, but I haven't had any issues so far. So like I'm having a pretty smooth experience, anecdotally. So like, I think the bigger issue here is that this is season 1. This is the first time that New World has ever directly asked players for something beyond cosmetic for extra money. This is the first time that they've ever, and like, yes, most of the premium season pass is very, very, very optional if you sit down and honestly look at it, especially the premium one. The premium one feels very optional, but it is not just cosmetic. There are some like extra gypsum in there. There's the ability to pay a little extra and get 20 levels of boost on it. There's some emotes in there. There's a couple of different kind of resources and random drops and things like that. So like it's a quality of life jump even for people that don't care about the way their character looks. And so there are going to be people who kind of buy it. Like I bought Halo Infinite's season 1 because I like Halo. I didn't expect it to be perfect because it was launch season, but they burned me so bad that I'll never buy another Halo Infinite season. Like it doesn't matter. Right. And so the other thing to think about here is this was their first time asking for money. So this wasn't a traditional patch drop. This wasn't 1.8 with Brimstone Sands. Like they've had plenty of patch drops over the last couple of years that, if they had to delay them, they had to delay them. If they didn't, they didn't. But this is also the first time they've tied players' wallets to that. And the trust is a little bit different when you start asking for people's money. So if you bought the season pass and you made what felt like even just 5 levels of progress on the season pass, and it did not give you those 5 levels, now you get to the end of the season, you only get to level 95. So you don't get the big title or whatever, even though you bought it and you did the work. That would be really frustrating.
Agreed. Now, for those of you who are new, hanging out as a part of this, Chris and I usually film Mondays and Tuesdays, going over MMORPG news and all kinds of things that are being kind of discussed. So be sure to hit that follow, that button, that sub, all the wonderful buttons that I guess they give you. You can always double tap dislike if you're on YouTube as well. I hear that button hasn't been working as of late, so you do you. Now, the Chill Game Theorist says, sort of like what Blue Protocol did with the network test. And for those of you who don't know the context, they had to delay their network test by 3 months. But that's in a beta. That's not in a live performance environment where those things are more natural to happen. And that's where you want that to happen. Once it's in production, there's a whole extra level of steps that you have to go in. I mean, even my wife got a funny shirt for me, says when I code, I do it in production, because ultimately, like, that's not where you want to be doing your experimentation. But even chat's also following up saying that several people are reporting as a part of this update that they're missing all their equipment. Now, I could tell you from a hands-on perspective, we've seen that actually happen one time where they marked a specific piece of equipment in some kind of category, and it was deleted out of people's inventories. But the devs have come back, like they did, like, oh, that's our fault, and they did go and reissue like the high quality version of that equipment to anybody who was impacted. So at its core, that sucks. Absolutely, that's definitely a miss in that regards, and ideally they'll find out why. But I don't think that's going to be a long-term problem, because they've shown that if they make a mistake, there's a bug like that happening, the players who get impacted, you get compensated more than what they actually ended up losing. So in a weird way, it's a frustrating lottery that they end up getting hit by with that. It's like, hey, congratulations. For the next 2 weeks, that piece of gear's gone, but something better is going to come. And I don't think it's going to take 2 weeks, because ultimately they just need to find out what essentially caused the issue with the players missing out in the gear. Now, at its core, though, like when it comes down to multiple posts on Reddit, like it could in fact be like a handful of people, and then you end up getting, there is this interesting glom on. There's definitely I've talked to people who have claimed things and then never back them up. And this is for any MMO. Yeah, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, let's talk about that. And they're like, strangely, I'm just going to back out of the door.
I do believe there are people being really affected. I just know that, like, I lived through patch 8.3 in World of Warcraft when they rolled out their market board change, and they were losing people's mail. And so the way their market board works is when an item sells, you get mailed the gold. And so you have to go pick up the gold. And that includes not just the what the person paid, but like, you can imagine that if you bought an item for 10 gold and you sold it for 100, your 10 is also in that 100. And so it's not just the 90 profit, but if you are somebody who's in the flipping economy, you've got a lot of money tied up in the market. And that's really common in New World as well, where people maybe are filling sell and buy orders. They're putting out, slow buy orders, and then they're rolling that over into long-term sell orders. And that's how they make their money. So they've got a lot of capital tied up in the market. So if at any time a portion of the market starts to act like a black hole, it starts sucking in a lot more than just their profit. And their nest egg goes away as well. And so that can be very, very frustrating. But all of a sudden, like, there was money being lost. World of Warcraft acknowledged that. But they also said the only thing that's an issue is it is not being mailed to the player. We are not losing it in our logs. So they came out and confirmed that very, very rapidly and said, we can still see all of your mail. We just can't get it to you. So stick with us while we try to find a way to make sure that we get it to you, because what we don't want to do is make a rapid change and lose your items. Right now, we're keeping all your items, so please just be patient, because we want to be accurate first and foremost. And all of a sudden, there were people who I know are keep 1,000 items listed at a time. They were wildly affected. But there were also people that I think were only playing 1 or 2 days a week that were like, yeah, my 1,000 items are gone too. And it's like, what 1,000 items? Like, you don't have 1,000 items. And so there was, so the problem got blown up to be substantially larger. It was already a large problem, but it got blown into something much larger. So just from having lived through that, I would say New World has to fix this very quickly, because at first there's going to be a lot of people reporting legitimate bugs, but that will grow into, I also lost a legendary sword. It was probably also a rare helmet and maybe like a blunderbuss, maybe. And
I've been looking for that Bliss blunderbuss the whole time, and I had it. I finally had it. I swear. I'm not overly worried. I'm sure we'll get some statement from the devs. But if you guys are finding that yourself impacted like that, be sure to go and report that on the forums, or even in game. You have an in-game report bug feature you can kind of submit that feedback to them and let them know. And ultimately, well, as long if it doesn't for some reason get sorted out, I'll be sure to talk about it in a video. We'll be sure to draw as much attention to it as possible. But then, yeah, essentially, like the Me Too in this case, like, yeah, this isn't the Silicon Valley Bank situation where it's like, oh no, all right, guys, withdraw all your items, keep them on your person all the time, so that way you don't have to worry about the storage situation.
Deposits were not what got lost at SVB.
I know. I'm just saying.
I just see people talking about like we're so shocked they refunded deposits, but like without getting into anything, the deposits were always safe because the first thing paid back is they sell off assets. So just to like. The headlines have wildly sensationalized the deposits being at risk.
Are you telling me there's a problem with media, both in social and in legacy? Interesting, Chris. Wow. And the sky is blue and water is wet. Anyway, I just thought it was funny because Neverlink's pointing that out. And that was just a wild, wild trip. Now, on that note, when we're looking here at the state of the season, like you're back, you've been playing the season pass. How do you feel about the interactions with the chapters and the card itself? Do you feel like you're like able to find the answers to your questions, or do you find like yourself just like completely at a loss because you're not playing on the PTR? So everything today is brand new to you.
So far I'm fine. So I find that like I have a lot of choices. When you first hop in, you have a lot of choices on what to do. As I'm whittling down my choices, I am finding that the activity card is not like, so I pulled up the WoW one to show how the WoW one works for people. Because it is the most similar of the 5 MMOs that I play to what New World has rolled out today. WoW's lets me literally avoid types of content I don't like, not just focus on ones I like and then do some of the things I don't like. I can literally avoid the things I don't like. So if you don't want to PvP, you don't have to PvP at all.
Yeah.
If you don't want to raid, you don't have to raid at all. If you don't want to do current expansion Dragonflight content, you don't have to do it at all. You could just literally just skip whole categories of content. The activity card that at least I got dealt, I don't know how different they can be. There's some icons that are in my activity card to be earned in my little bingo card.
Yeah.
That I can show on stream here that I didn't even have a shield. So like, they're like, you can earn a shield icon. Well, there was no shield icon. So like some of that may vary by what you're getting. So like, I don't know exactly what all this rolls out to be, but my first card, all 4 corners are PvP related. And as somebody that doesn't do a lot of PvP in this game, that starts to feel like I can hear Narc and the Ashes community, like just,
you don't like PvP?
Like, oh,
we are the PvP MMOs are the biggest MMOs in the world. We just haven't had a good one. Like that's the counter like argument. It's like I'm all for the PvP MMO, but it's like let's just be realistic. We're like PvE MMO players vastly outweigh the PvPers, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just a function of math. There are more people standing in this room than there are in this room, and the counter is like, but the room isn't as good. We're just waiting for a really good room, and then they're all going to come and fill in. It's like I would love to believe that, and I will like I'm a hopeful guy, but. Like I'm just a numbers. Like I look at the numbers. I'm like, cool. Like if it happens, it happens. But there's just no perfect room out there that's going to appeal like to people who just don't want to do PvE content. In that regard.
So that's where I'm at. Is like this is the first time I've been short Azoth because I've refreshed that activity thing and it's been more and more expensive.
It's a good use for Azoth. What do you think?
Finally, my God, the Azoth has gotten so like useless. Like there's so few times that I want it. Like step 1 of getting a really good tool is like, make sure I get one that doesn't have freaking Azoth on it. Cause what the hell am I going to do with that? And now it's like, oh, I'm going to buy season stuff. And so I really like that. So I think that's a really good thing to have a use for Azoth. So far I like it. Like it'll be interesting to see kind of how hard it is to get to level 100. What are they really expecting? You have 85 days to get 99 levels. So is it easy to consistently get more than 1 level a day? Do you feel like you're expected to play 7 days a week for 3 months? I think a lot of MMO players probably do check in with the game pretty regularly throughout the week, but I think it's not uncommon in the MMO space to have a couple of days in your week that are heavy hitters.
Right. The devs said that they try to design this for like 40 to 50 hours of playtime to complete the season.
Well, that's more than enough to get all the drops.
Yeah, that should be reasonable. My change that I'm going to continue to advocate for is what you've said with I think the right amount of FOMO is like let sell the season pass during the season, and then once season 2 rolls around, let us keep the season 1 pass if you haven't finished it, but you can only buy season 1 during season 1, and then down
Yeah,
the road if they want to bundle it or something, because then
especially
you
if
could.
you want that Flaming Legend title at level 99, you were level 95.
Yeah. Well, right. And then you don't feel like, oh gosh, like I need to go play, but I got to go to work, or like life events happen, like, oh, I need to go out of town all of a sudden, unexpectedly. I guess I'm not going to get that thing I paid for. And I think if they could look at that transition as they go into season 2, etc., that I think would sell a lot more season 1, because then you, during the next 85 days, can decide if you want to drop $20 on the rewards, and as long as you do it within that time frame, it's yours, and you can level it at your own pace. So you imagine somebody who's like, yeah, I'm thinking about coming back this fall. They might just log in, get the pass, log out, log in for season 2, get the pass, log out. Hey, now it's the fall, and they got 3 seasons passes worth of things that they can grind on and have fun with when they're in their gaming time zone. I think that would be truly a big, awesome change that we could see here. Now, Veltis, and sorry if I'm butchering the name, regarding the activity card, he says it looks like a real big chore list to him, and that is what those things are in and of itself. But Chris, like you were saying, it's actually pushing you into things in this game that you really have never touched before. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a good thing, as long as those things are not mandatory. So ideally what you have is in an MMO, there's, let's say, 10 ways to play, hypothetically. And you like playing 3 of them. And you've spent all your time since the game playing out focusing on those 3. And there might have been some little amount of story or something you had to do to unlock something, but you just got it out of the way. Whatever part you didn't like, you just got that out of the way. And you're focused on your 3 little buckets. And every time a patch comes out, there's updates to hopefully all 10 buckets. And so your 3 buckets get hit along with everybody else's 3 buckets. Well, ideally what this sort of thing does is say, hey, your 3 buckets are going to give you a decent amount of season stuff, but you could get a lot more reward if you were willing to kind of dabble in a couple of the other buckets. Just pick any other 2. And so that way you're looking at the other 7 and you're like, well, I know I don't like 3 of them, but the other 4, I really just hadn't given a fair shot. And it can be an invitation kind of just generously tossed out to say, why don't you just do a little bit of this and see if you actually like it a lot more than you thought you did. Like when your mother made you take a bite of a vegetable for the first time, and you might actually realize you liked it. Where it will struggle is if to complete the season pass, it's like, oh, well, you must complete 7 buckets. And you're like, I only like 3. So you actually spend more time doing things you don't like than things you do. That's the counterweight. And so, every game that has a season pass type model has to try to balance that invitation into the rest of their content. You want people to be aware of, you built all 10 buckets, so you want people to try them all. You don't want people to feel forced, because that's where it just starts to feel like a job.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm clicking on the wrong one. Valtis follows up and says, but you can progress the season pass without doing the activity card stuff. Or in this case, the question. If so, then I'm more okay with it. But the activity card is the only way to get progress. Then I dislike it in its implementation. And the good news is the activity card is not the only way you get progress. You're actually getting passive experience through all the activities that you're doing. And this even goes down to player XP. That was a big part of the feedback that I had. I was like, I'm fishing and I'm choosing to fish, and therefore I'm losing out on seasonal pass progress. That feels like you took fishing off the list. And they replied, hey, it's on the activity card. I was like, not every activity card. I can't lock it on the activity card. So no, it's not on the activity card. It's randomly there as a bonus, which is fine. Just give me some passive experience. And so what they've done is they say every 10,000 player experience that you get 25 season. It's not the fastest way. And I'm like, I'm not advocating for that to be the fastest way. I literally just want everything I'm doing to have some value for rewards. And this hopefully will lead into the the aptitude system for the player experience level and more. But that means quests, factions, crafting, gathering. Everything you're doing is actually progressing you on that path. And guess what? And here's the fun thing is that while you're doing all those activities, you're also now getting those things to fill up on those cards anyway by choosing to do what you want to do. And so you're going to get those regular bonuses overall, because the devs are great, in my opinion. We've had a lot of great conversations, because I was talking with them. I was like, oh, Like, because at first they were like, are you just trying to like speed through the pass? And I was like, actually, like, no, I like to play the game the way it feels very organic to me. Sometimes it's like, oh, I'm gonna focus in on these objectives. Sometimes I'm like, I'm just gonna run in this direction and I'm gonna see what happens. And that in and of itself gives me that level of flexibility, because if I just like, if I had a hard day at work, and this is like the example, is like if I have a hard day at work and the thing I just want to do is chill on the Steam Deck and fish, that's great. And it's cool if I can get some of those bonuses. I'll be checking on those. But really, I just want to chill and fish. I don't want to feel like I'm not, I'm losing time on that. And what it is like, yeah, I'm fishing and I'm gaining just a little bit of that experience, just a little bit, nothing to write home at. But again, it just feels better. I'm glad they did something like that.
It's also a game that's really good at tracking that. Like, just because you hit max character level, you're still getting experience, because that's how they track standing, kind of. And like when you hit 200 on a crafting skill or whatever, there's like an entire post progression system.
Yeah, they have it for crafting and for gathering and refining. What they need it now, because we were actually talking about this in your live stream, they need it for weapons and they need it for player experience, because the one thing the 10K to 25 seasonal doesn't show any progress bar anywhere. Right. And they weren't going to get that in for season 1, but I am expecting and looking for, right, just like fill it up, just give that feedback to the player, so you're like, hey, it is honestly, if anybody's ever played Gears of War, I am a huge Gears head. Like, I love the Gears of War series. It is my guilty pleasure. And one beautiful thing about how that game's designed is you're working on 1,000 different bars all like by playing, and some of the goals are just absurd, but there's all these milestones that like fill in that gap, and you're always like 10 minutes away from completing something. Like, it's unreal how well they've got that, that kind of like that carrot in front of the stick. You're like, oh, if I do one more match, I'm going to knock out 3 more of these objectives. Oh, I just did that match. Oh, if I did one more match, like I'm going to actually fill in these objectives. And by all of a sudden you're like, it's Vampire Survivors, but it's a version shooter. Chris, did I tell you I sat down and finally played Vampire Survivors?
Oh, well.
Lost 6 hours of my life.
That's getting to work this morning.
Oh man, that was insane. I was like, I sat down, I was like, oh gosh, I'm so excited. I look up and it was like almost 2 a.m. I was like, oh man, this is gonna suck tomorrow. Thanks, Fido.
But it's already gonna suck tomorrow, so you might as well play one more.
Just one more match. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'm close to being able to afford this permanent upgrade. Let's freaking go, baby. Oh yeah, 19. I love clapping those freaking weapons. And then any other thoughts on the season? Because I want to take a break to thank everybody for their support over on Twitch and on YouTube before we get into our second half of the show.
No, I think we'll just have to see how it plays out. They've got this journey version, they've got this activity card version. So we'll just have to see what it feels like. I think feedback will be necessary, and then there will be a second season sometime between 85 and 95 days from now.
Yeah, and the nice thing is we also know some of the big features that season 2 is going to have. We're going to see the raid, we're going to see transmog, and that's going to be an interesting system once implemented, because I think that's going to drive a lot of values to the Twitch drops that are live right now here on Work to Game. But that's also going to be any of the glamoring stuff, like having that as a collection to be able to sit down and build that out as a part of it, and in-game stuff. I think it's going to be that extra checklist that a lot of people are looking for, because beyond the transmog, the other one, like transmog, raid, and mounts, seem to be kind of the big 3. Occasionally you get someone asking about swimming. I'm not so worried. I've never been like, oh man, this game absolutely needs swimming. But beyond that, I don't want to discount somebody with that feedback, but this summer and this fall, like in and of itself, is like New World's going to be adding in like so many cool systems. And the thing I'm looking forward most about the raid, because I love open world stuff. I love running around the open world with everybody. And we've done multiple groups, like, but it's just like, hey, you're captain of team, team A, you're captain team B, you're captain team C. The summer not only adds the raid, it also adds the interface so that we could make our own war band that's running around the open world. So it makes it a little bit easier to hopefully manage these parties and take on bigger world bosses, which are also coming and on the way, which is really exciting to see. So I think it's actually like, when I've been looking at New World for 2023, I was like, this is a really big year, because then it leads into the expansion. Then you get to see, hopefully some big things from the team this year, which will be exciting. But nevertheless, there's a lot of other big games coming out on the horizon as well. Now let's take a moment to thank everybody over here on Twitch. We've seen a lot of Prime subs. I've seen Pharma Girl gifting out a lot of subs as well. It looks like Sheriff Sniffers and Chili Demon also gifting out some subs. So welcome in. Hopefully you guys enjoy the ad-free viewing experience. If you're not aware, YouTube's also now starting to run ads midstream. And I knew that was going to come at some point. So we just want to thank you guys. Sorry if you end up getting hit by an ad. You can always just let us know if you do, so we can hang out with you guys and wait to answer any kind of questions you have. Chris and I film Monday and Tuesdays with these live shows going over y'all's questions, topics, and more. And over on the YouTube side, I want to shout out, we have some insane members. I'm butchering it. Gex at 28 months, WG Productions 37 months, Randy at 36 months, Ellipsy 3 months, Paul at 4, Gamer Freak at 6, Chef B at 9, Delivery Moogle at 18. Like it's Cub 50 months over on the YouTube side for membership, guys. So thank you guys, Devin and Salty, so much for your support of our content of this podcast. And the thing I'm looking forward to most is YouTube's put a plan together to help make podcasting better on their platform, which as the two people who put out podcasts on this channel, I think that's going to be massively huge for us. And hopefully you guys have been enjoying the content. Chris, you got anything to say before we transition into our community feedback comment section? All right.
I'm ready.
He is ready. All right. Let me fire up the screen here. Again, guys, be sure to comment on the videos, the podcasts. That's where we go and source these as a way of just continuing to make this, a conversation piece. GTX hanging out over on the YouTube, chatting out as well. Cat girls are back in this case. Now, Z Sheets writes on Final Fantasy XIV, I like when we had the cross job abilities and we were encouraged to level multiple things. I liked when the Marauder Warrior had a longer range, but a directional AoE. I liked it when the jobs didn't have roll actions. Having everything with a roll feels like you can trade it for anything else and see little to no difference is making me not want to play this game anymore. Chris, what do you think?
I mean, that's the downside, right? When we complain that one class isn't welcome in an ultimate piece of content or in a particularly hard-tuned Savage or something like that, there is this very logical solution to just give them whatever makes the other class better, or to take whatever's making the other class better and nerf it so that they all come back in line with each other. But if you do that enough times, the classes are identical. And so, we're playing New World this week, and they have different weapons as their classes. And if the musket and the bow, if one of those is considered better, if you just gave them identical skill trees and identical, range fall off and identical damage profiles, then it would purely be a cosmetic thing. You would lose something. But you could be really frustrated that it's like, well, I really like the way the bow feels, and the bow just, maybe isn't doing as well in a particular piece of content as the musket is at this time. And so that complaint is very valid, but sometimes the solution can make things worse.
Mm-hmm. Now, for me, I actually feel what they feel. I think the problem with how the system was set up in ARR is they really didn't invest in it and they didn't work to improve it. And so the solution that they chose was the only natural solution, was to just get rid of it and bring in the cross rolls, because there wasn't really choice. Like basically how the existing system was in ARR, which I liked going and leveling the other classes into the jobs, because for me, that was very Final Fantasy XI. That's actually how Final Fantasy XIV 1.0 was structured, where you would go on these things, you would do these things, and it would open up. It would, like, you've done this, and now it opens up to the job, which is going to give you way more party focus. And the classes were way more single player. Like, there was a time in Final Fantasy that you couldn't run around the open world as a black mage. You'd get melted. But if you were in a party, you would be so destructive. It was a glass cannon. And then into 2.0, they had to restructure the whole game, and we got what we got. But my frustration with it was the system they had in place for the cross class. While I remember it and miss it, it was a system of you only make the wrong choice. Like the only choice it was giving you was a choice to make a mistake. And one of the reasons is you could take weapon skills off of other classes, but because they didn't combo off of anything, they were literally useless. There was no debuff. There was no benefit at all for taking these. And so it really really came into here's the 5 skills that you need, and it became a chore, especially for newer players coming into the game. So I can understand why they went with the what they went with, but I really wish that we would have seen them kind of invest, because they only also gave you the ability to choose from 2 classes, like that, like you weren't able to kind of pick from the gambit and try to build out something unique and interesting and experimental. And so we've seen that kind of process happening ever since that day. And Loyal Mango says, happy to see us. And then he goes on to say he's hoping to see cross jobs like in Final Fantasy 11 when they start hitting level 100. Now, Yoshi P's confirmed that the level cap is going to 100. We don't know what's going to happen after that, but Chris, do you have any kind of speculation as to, any kind of hopes or any kind of thoughts? Like, is level 100 the right time to change up that kind of progression system going forward?
It's the downside of vertical progression. New World announced that this year in season 3, they're going to be adding an expansion that will increase the level cap. They have not increased their character level cap, just their item level cap. But any element of vertical progression, the problem is that it is by its very nature power creep. And power creep, that means that every set of levels either has to just be so magnificent that everything before it is now trash, or it has to be so minor that it's like, well, why am I even doing all this work? I'm only 10% stronger than I was before. And so, like, those are your choices. So we end up with these times of slow grind, and we end up with these times of massive grind, as far as like how much power we're gaining per hour of effort or whatever. Mm-hmm. Seeing a massive combat system change would be a huge shift for an existing MMO.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine them doing it. Yoshi P's statement was, we will be going to 100, and we think that just going to 110 would feel pretty lackluster. So there is a sign that they are looking into something pretty substantial. But like, as much as WoW and 14 and Guild Wars may not look like the game they did 10 years ago for the players who were here 10 years ago, they are still within like a single margin of error of what they were, compared to jumping to an all-new system, compared to jumping to something that is that drastic, hoping for something like true cross-class, not just the cross-class skills we had before, but something where you have like a true subclass or something like that. And so that's just something that, like, the only way to avoid that as an MMO is don't turn 10 years old. Like, that's the solution. The solution is don't turn 10, because as soon as you age, that's where that's going to show up.
See, for me, I would say, like, I think I would actually probably physically cry if they came out and said, we're going to have the sub job system brought in to replace the cross roll system. And even if they wanted to restrict down the sub job options to like a handful, so you're not having to balance against like, oh, I'm going to be a white mage warrior, while I think that would be interesting. And what would that look like in the content? You're looking at a massive look at all the content that's already been made. And I'm going to say, like, I just don't see that happening. But if they did, I would cry. Like, that would be something so awesome to see as somebody who's an 11 veteran, as somebody who likes how New World has so much choice. And the counter argument that I always get is like, there's a meta, there's no always choice. It's like, yeah, there's always choice. Like, you can choose to worry about that, or you can choose to have fun and not stress. It's like at the core of it, like, yeah, like if you want to sit here, and there is a percentage of the player base that's the vocal minority that I think absolutely has that, like, has to know the meta, and then there's everybody else who's willing to kind of challenge that meta. But that's my Final Fantasy 11 experience. Like, we would challenge the meta all the time. The meta was set, and we would change the meta by changing expectations, by trying to think how synergies between the jobs themselves could work in different ways, and how everybody else is bringing. But that's also a thing of what matchmaking gets you. Matchmaking means that there's no guarantee who gets put in your group. And if you're going to have that convenience-based feature, there's some trade-offs. And so you're going to trade off that build expectation, because imagine getting matched in with a blue mage who only had hydrogen, and you're like, okay, water, like we're here, and it's been 50 minutes and we're not even done to the first boss. This guy cannot do it. But you got the unfortunate luck of the draw. And so they prevent those systems because they realize how frustrating and toxic they would be. But yeah, if they brought in a sub job system to 14, it would literally change my mind. It would be so exciting to see just what they could do. And so the restriction on it would be, in my mind, just to keep it mathematically simple, you think rock, paper, scissors, like every job, like only is able to have like 2 to 3 options. Like, you restrict down the options so that each choice that you have is only going to augment something. And from a skills perspective, they do that to rework the whole skill system. Or if they were going to keep it simple, have it bring in traits. So if you would like, hey, I'm going to sub, red mage, that means it's going to, I'm going to randomly get that insta cast or something like that. So it's not anything that's just so rotationally breaking. It just ends up just kind of being a perk here and there. But and that's just a example off the top of my head. I'm sure somebody would do the math and be like, that's already broken. It's like, who knows? Like, who knows? Neverlink saying, so self-made limited jobs. I would be perfectly fine if they put that into a limited job approach, right? What do you think about that, Chris? Like taking the sub jobs and not making it a part of the game, but making it a part of the limited job system, which right now only represents one job, the Blue Mage.
I think that is the solution to make it more complex, to not break dungeons, raids, all these things that are specifically tuned where we're just going to do the math, to make it to where you're doing open world stuff or you're doing weird unsynced challenges or something like that. The answer is straight up to go create a combat system that can be flexible when flexibility doesn't matter. So that when somebody does the math and it breaks the hell out of it, it doesn't matter. Like nothing's wrong with that. So if you created a system that gives you some ultimate ability to basically one-shot an open world mob, who cares? Like who cares? But the moment you bring that into raid, that sucks. So like that's what I would personally like to see them do. If they are going to add something crazy as a subclass system, I think starting to make more parts of the world function the way Blue Mage does things. If you want to go bicolor gemstone grind and that allows you to like AoE multi-pull as a black mage, that's really fun. So I would put it in something like that and not break the way that party comp comes together. Because the moment there's party comp, people will just do the math. Okay, turns out it's 10% of the time that the red mage thing gives you an instant cast, and I can straight up tell you, based on where that falls rotationally, what that does to the DPS of a black mage. Like, and they would just do the math. And then the devs would do the math because they would want to tune the next ultimate to be appropriate. And so then anything below that won't clear the damage check.
And then that's where I think when you look at the team that Yoshi P has talked about and been, he's been very open about it. He wishing having, the budget of WoW, the team size of WoW. And in order to do these kind of systems, one of the biggest things that they would have to change is they'd have to dramatically increase team size, because like while math is math, the part of the balance ends up being is that you as a, the developer are looking at these avenues and these areas being brought in and letting people, and then having to make adjustments. If you don't make adjustments, if you don't make changes, those things get set for such a long time that when you do make those changes, it ends up being like you ripping the Band-Aid off. Like you end up like, shocking the system, and it's usually not really fun and well received. But we saw Yoshi P try to do that with the PvP changes last year and ended up introducing way more problems than anything else. So like in and of itself, the heart wants what it wants, but like I just don't see it happening unless Yoshi P gets on stage and is like, we've tripled size of the team, we're going to be doing all these interesting things, and maybe X, Y, and Z only applies in piece of content. I think overall that would be pretty cool. And then chat saying maybe the 11 devs, they've been reduced dramatically after being reduced dramatically before. So the only thing I can see
loaned up to other teams. The argument there is maybe they're coming over to 14.
I think when it comes down to it, it's my like I've seen speculation and theory casting, especially when it comes to the new world in Final Fantasy 14. And if they call that new world Vanadiel, I think that would be something really cool. But they'd have to have a systems in place that kind of was appealing to try and attract the Final Fantasy 11 base. And honestly, it'd be really interesting to see them try and put that kind of stuff in 14, which would give them so much more flexibility. Because right now, as it sits, the way that it's developed, they have to like rebuild that entire game. So I would think that you would go try and utilize the teams that you have, as best as you can in this case. Now, any other thoughts on this one before we move to our next comment?
Next comment.
All right. I hit an arrow key and nothing happened. Let's hit F11 and then try again. All right. B Tactics TV says, I'm catching this on the playback, gonna leave another comment on the entertainment, but I am enjoying the content here. Thank you, B Tactics, for that support on these videos, guys. Don't forget to drop a comment if you're watching this, if you're watching this in the archive as a VOD. We always try to go back and grab the comments so we can feature them here. So thank you very much, B Tactics. And I don't know why, like the arrow keys were working, but not anymore. So we'll just keep going in this case. Now, Chief Adam writes, happy about getting a blue update. I don't care really about the traditional rating anymore. I'm about to start doing the blue stuff on the Morbol. That's more interesting at this point. So with the new spells and the fights, that they're going to be pretty fun. Hopefully the rewards for Criterion this time are rewarding. Else it's DOA like the last one. And it's fun, just not worth the time to repeat. Well, either way, I'm probably going to play 10.1 more anyway. I'm more interested in the M+2 season and the regular rating or anything else Square is really offering for spending my time doing this patch or half patch. I might check out the Island Sanctuary update, but I'm more interested in gearing in WoW's upcoming patch. They've solved the issue that was grinding my gears the worst, and they upgrading the items gear are earnable by completing the content. It's about time. Probably where I spend a good amount of time outside of the patch days sales in 14. Now, I personally wasted a lot of gil on my fellow FC members. How easy it is for gil to be made. So, Chris, there's a couple of thoughts obviously in here. He's talking about blue mage and replacing the normal rating cycle for him. We've seen a lot of players main blue, in Final Fantasy 14, and it's good to see that blue's finally going to be able to go up to the next level tier. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's an MMO is made up of a wide variety of players that consume it in a wide variety of ways at a wide variety of hours and skill levels. But the ones that are the most exciting or the most engaging are the ones that get shared the most on Reddits, Discords, Twitch, YouTube, wherever, Twitter. Like those are the ones that become the dominant ones in like what we talk about. And so when you see side content become somebody's kind of main game, it can feel very isolating. Like, are there really blue mage mains? Are there really crafting mains? Are there really just guild makers? Are there people who only play an MMO for the story? Are there whatever it is, depending on the game, like that feels, and they get memed on. And so anytime they come out in public and say, I play WoW because I love the story in World of Warcraft, there's 65,000 kappas in chat, which just basically tells that person, like, screw off, go play somewhere else. You're not welcome here. You're welcome to play however you want. And like, I think Blue Mage is a super fun way to take the balanced shared world combat system of what we have and say, what if there was a class that didn't have to follow those rules? I wish they'd had a second limited job so we could see like what would be another way of breaking the rules. Because right now, Blue Mage is the only way of breaking the rules. And so if you don't like that classes break the rules, or you don't like Blue Mage, that's one in the same. And I would love it to be like, well, I think there'd be other fun ways to break the rules, and maybe Blue Mage is your favorite, or maybe Beastmaster is your favorite, or something like that. And so I have seen Blue Mage mains, and I like to progress everything on Blue Mage is a huge undertaking. It's a ton of time. It probably takes some level of community to get in there and get some of those clears. Some of them are very hard. I've watched a lot of those streams. They're very fun. It just, like, I would love to see that sort of content continue to get invested in. It feels weird that we went so long without hearing anything about it. We thought it was coming this expansion, but we'd never heard anything. And I would love to see them able to update it maybe more than once per expansion.
Yeah, more than once per expansion, and expand on it with additional jobs. I think Puppet Master and Beastmaster being added in would really help to start to, I think, get people excited. Just like we said earlier, like if there was a limited version of everything that you could play, and that just changes up. Like, hey, okay, awesome. Yeah, matchmaking, we get it. It's not going to be for you because you might not have unlocked X, Y, and Z, but you can sit down and have a good time with it. Now, as to their second part of kind of their comment here, talking about WoW 10.1, World of Warcraft has come out with their own roadmap. In my mind, from everything we've seen in the past to where they are now, they seem that one of the key aspects, and I kind of echo this when they talked about they got feedback, and it took a long time to kind of work out of the hole that they dug all the way into Shadowlands. But because of that feedback back from, I think it was Legion, that they were able to start finally making the changes, and those are hitting with Dragonflight, and that's gearing, and that's so much more. And so I've heard a lot of positive things about the latest expansion. I know you said you've been enjoying it. What is it about 10.1 with WoW in Dragonflight's season, and how does that fit in with something like Final Fantasy 14?
So WoW's patch cadence has always been a little bit like expansion by expansion. How long is a patch? What are the sub patches? What all does a patch include? It's really varied. So when you have a good one, there is a question of like, will the next one be good too? But Dragonflight actually changed a lot of that by releasing a roadmap and showing like what their intentions for a patch are. They gave us a rough tentative timeline similar to New World as far as like, here's kind of when we think ish those are. Not as specific as kind of what Final Fantasy does, but the trend right now in MMOs is to be more specific than you've been previously. So for Final Fantasy, who was already within a couple weeks of being predictable, they had to move to full predictability to kind of meet that criteria. But for games like WoW that have ranged anywhere from 100 days to a patch cycle to 300 days to a patch cycle, they just need to kind of drop it down to something that's close to the same. And they seem to be doing that. They released a half patch that had what like Final Fantasy would traditionally put in an odd numbered patch with basically a catch up gear and all that, which was tied to a new zone, all these new rares, all this new stuff to grind. So that there was stuff for people that didn't necessarily need the catch up gear. There's all this like just constant stream of content. So if there's ever part of it you don't enjoy, you feel like, okay, well, I'll just play a little bit less each week until the next wave gets here. And that's a really healthy thing for an MMO, regardless of the MMO. Season 1 started for New World today, and like Season 2, they said in their Q&A, their recent Q&A, that they don't want those to ever be more than 95 days apart. And so that always tells you that if you get to the point where, you know, like in the free version, there's like a dog that you can get for your house at level 50 of 100, you might be done. You know, if they expect it to take 40 hours, you might be done at level 50, and then you might just hop on with your friends to do an expedition or two every week, and you're just hanging out until Season 2 gets here. And that's kind of where WoW is right now. So it's really nice for WoW to be kind of in that position where at least their own community members consider them healthy. There are a lot of people that don't like WoW, and that's fine, but like that wouldn't matter if the game was healthy or not. So the group you're trying to actually make the game good for are the people that do have it installed and are currently subscribed and are playing.
All right.
Awesome.
Luma writes, blue players are definitely going to be really happy. It's getting the level cap increased to 80 and the blue exclusive armor set with new spells as well in 6.45. Now, when it comes to the spells and the builds, like when it comes down to this aspect, like this is the first time we're seeing them in like be able to plan out more updates for the Blue Mage, because I think it was when it went to 70, that was their original content plan and offering, right? Like if my math is correct on that one. And so this is the first time from just the next level, from taking that feedback and applying it. What do you think is what do you want to see as a part of these skills and these abilities, as well as like Blue Mage as it moves forward into the future?
So I didn't finish unlocking all of the first skills. I got like half of them or something, 2/3 of them, something. I didn't get quite all of them. I got a couple of rare ones. I got a lot of the easy ones. And I didn't finish all the challenges. I messed around with the Master Carnival a little bit, but I didn't do anything too crazy. What I would say is, like, from just what I experienced, I would love for them to pair it with reasons to go out and engage in stuff like the bicolor gemstones, because this will be the first time they're high enough to earn those. So I would love to see it kind of learn to supplement the other jobs, so that people maybe treat it as like, wow, I can't believe Blue Mage has a bicolor gemstone mount. And that's not really what it has. It's that there's a bicolor gemstone mount and you didn't want bicolors and now you do. So I would hope they tie it into existing forms of content, if not go way further and tie it to things like a Blue Mage PvP. But I would also love to see them start doing things that interact with other Blue Mages really well. I think right now it's really fun to be the only Blue Mage in a group, but I would love to see them start to do things that, like when you do alliance raids with Blue Mages, one of the Blue Mages will freeze everything and the other will electrify will kill everything that is frozen. And that works really well together. I liked that integration. And it was something that made being multiple Blue Mages in a party really, really fun.
Yeah. And for me, I think essentially when it comes down to the Blue Mage, I just like, man, a part of me just still wishes that it was just a couple of patches at most behind level cap. So the fact that we're still going to have to wait till sometime in 7.0 for it just to go to 90, I think is going to be something that is something that I'm always going to want. But who knows? We'll see as things change. But thank you, Luma, for that comment as well. Now, as we wind down on our live show, Kiera, and I hope I'm not butchering the name here, writes, as a returning player to New World, welcome back. What's a good server to pop into on NA East? I'm looking for an overall active community in PvE and PvP. Purple Gang bias helps too. Chris, why don't you take the first crack at this question?
Are we on East?
We are.
And Orifina's great. So Brian,
and we're Syndicate. We're Purple Boys.
And we're purple. So like MMOs having multiple servers. Like I just want to ask you, Brian's the one that plays more New World here.
Yeah.
I just want to ask you, like, so I think they're adding some cross-world PvP in season 2, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, OPR for the that's the Outpost Rush, which is the level 60 PvP. It is the 20v20, like battlegrounds to kind of try to relate it to World of Warcraft in some way. And that will actually get cross-server OPR. And then the expeditions are going to get cross-server. The arena is getting cross-server. They've got that tentative for the season 4. So unfortunately, we still have to wait through the expansion. Those two things, the expeditions and more, like that's going to be, I think, a real big game changer for New World, because the question about what server do I need to be on, a part of the nature of the game is you see migrations off of different servers. And so what is true today could be false in 6 months. And so the thing we have committed to as both content creators but players of New World is we're not changing servers. The only way we're not playing on Orifina is if they merge Orifina in with another server and the name in and of itself changes. Being that we advertise where we're playing, we don't want to sit here and do a rug pull and have you transfer over to come game with us. And that's going to be where it is. Now, if you're looking for a more active, I would actually recommend getting on the New World official Discord from Amazon, because that way you could kind of ask, like, especially when it comes to the PvP. Chris and I did our first duels today. It was absolutely thrilling. Like, that was a lot of fun, and we should definitely do more of that. And I actually really enjoy PvP content. So I've done OPRs, I've done arenas, but I'm not like, I don't have the time to be fully pot committed to PvP. So we do it when we do our community game days. But if you're looking for a more active community and it's not on Orifina, I would definitely check out the either Reddit or essentially the official Discord to kind of get a gauge of what people are doing. So welcome back, A, first and foremost, and B, if you already have friends that are playing the game, that's going to be your best bet. If you're looking for a community that we consider ourselves that hyper casual, we're really well informed, we really like games, but we're not going to sit here and make you have to log in and do things on any kind of schedule, because that's just not what works for us. Chris plays during the day because he's the full-time content creator on the stream, and I play on the weekends on occasion, and usually I make those announcements for that. So that's the best advice that I can give you. But we're excited that you're back, and we really hope that you have a good time with the game.
Well, always play where your friends are. That's the general MMO advice. If you have anybody you can share a game with, that's the person to share the game with. That is always the best bet. So
we got one more question, but before we get to that, NT Gardner, and sorry, gosh, man, am I reading? I should start a YouTube channel where I have to try to read words very poorly as a dyslexic person. Puts in a $5 super chat, says, love you guys. Have a blessed day. Thank you, NT, for that epic support over on the YouTube. And again, thanks to Farmer Girl and so many people kicking off. We're close to a hype train apparently over on Twitch now because of your guys' support. If you guys don't know, you have free Bezos bucks. That's Amazon Prime, Prime Gaming. Gets you free loot in your games. And you have to manually gift it, and you don't have to use it here at Work to Game on Twitch, but drop it on somebody. That's Bezos money that if you don't use it, he keeps it. If you use it, you're giving a gift to somebody who actually, I would assume, needs it, especially in the content creation space. So enjoy free ads, ad-free viewing if you have that perk. Whether you use it here or somebody else, be sure to use it. We're bad at reminding people, and every time we do, that's when all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, we probably should remind you about Amazon Prime Gaming if you guys have Amazon Prime. Now, before we wrap up today's show and Chris returns back to New World and I return back to lurking in chat, Loyal Mango, with an interesting question here, writes, my last question for you both is, yes, it's a long shot. Eorzea and Vanadiel coming together. Maybe, or is this in a pipe dream? What do you think, Chris?
I don't think that they come together in the way that like 11 interacts. I don't think we have a PSO2 Genesis. I think if anything, you're looking at a Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 1 took place in a place called Cantha. Guild Wars 2 was always said to take place in the same universe. And in End of Dragons, kind of their Endwalker type experience, they actually went back to Cantha, which is the Guild Wars 1 land. But the way they handled that time-wise is there had been, Cantha has been locked away for a substantial number of years. And so they can justify Cantha being recognizable, but it is a different Cantha because so much time has passed. So I think if it is indeed Vanadiel located right there on the same planet in Final Fantasy XIV, we have already seen the planet rotate in some odd little cutscenes and fights, but more importantly from the moon now, we can see them rotate. And so we know how big the New World is. We know where the New World is. We have actually have documentation of people who have come from the New World. So it is navigable. So like we have evidence that we would go there at some point. We could, if they want us to. It could be Vanadiel. But if it is, like, just expect that it's not necessarily like a sign that it'll pull exactly from 11. It's not a sign that the integration with 11. Those things could be true, but also separate.
Yeah, and Veritas puts this out is that if it comes together, it's going to be an alternate version of Vanadiel as well. And so what would be really cool is that I honestly think if they did add Vanadiel in any capacity, that would have to be, that would be a must play for me. That would be a must return moment. And to come back and step in and see how they've rendered it, even just from a visual perspective, in the world of Final Fantasy XIV, in the engine of Final Fantasy XIV. The thing, though, is that as much as I have really good memories of Final Fantasy 11, and as much as like Horizon 11 is out there doing, I think, good work, putting out a version of the game makes it easy to get in. It's still a hard game in that regards. But as much as we look at 11 fondly, we have to be willing to compromise on various different aspects. Now, the big question, the big thing that I would say is that to what purpose would they put Vanadiel in that would be exciting and at the same time, not necessarily feeling like a slap in the face, to like the 11 players, right? One of the things I felt about Eureka was I want more Eureka. I don't want it segmented over into this one space. So they were going to bring in something like Vanadiel, which is a massive landmass, which has a lot of nostalgia history, which in my mind would have Windurst and Bestock and Sandoria and Juno. Like whether they want to tell a story before or a story, sometime after, or its own story within the world of 14 that utilizes this backdrop, this world. Like, would this be a good opportunity for them to kind of like rethink the open world and the systems that interact? And my dream would be yes, because how like Eureka works, how Bozja and them work, that's what I want in the open world. And the only way to do that is with the technological underpinning behind the scenes. The reason why those systems work is they put them on the instant server so they can guarantee that whenever you're going to do it, it's going to pull from a big population of people and force them into the zone. And 14 would have to do that for its open world to really be able to start to bring interesting things that actually could be done in the open world. And Vanadiel would be a great opportunity to sit here and say, hey, here's all these different zones. We've taken all the fun things that you guys liked in Eureka and the Bozja and Zadnor, and we're just putting those in the game itself. And you can go about and do that and play in this space. That would be so exciting. I would scream. I would probably cry because I'm easy and quick to cry. But that's what I want. It's not just don't just name it Vanadiel. Don't just name it these iconic places. Look at what people really enjoy. And yes, you're not going to get that slow combat. You're not going to get that you died and we're going to punish you for it. But they could bring in the medal system so that when you die, there is a cost outside of gear repair, but it's not a part of an instant server. I think the instant server, not being able to chat with your friends, not being able to invite people into your group, having to back in, back out. What I want to see is a technological underpinning behind the scenes that puts people into the open world and then balances the open world accordingly. We know that they can put several hundred people in the open world. I say do that and balance it behind the scenes. Chris, you got any follow-up thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I think it's a big ask what you're talking about. I think Paglefan is a huge place that became a dungeon.
Yeah.
And not a hard dungeon. So like, I think it's more likely that it just gets a nod, if anything. But yeah, I mean, it would be awesome with that stuff. Mr. Happy asked in an interview if we could get critical engagements tied to fates in the open world. And if we had a whole technical explanation why the answer is effectively no. Now, he said no to things before, and we've gotten them as technology has improved.
Yeah.
But at the time, the answer was no.
Yeah, and that's why, like, if we were going to explore the New World, I haven't been keeping up on the lore, but I could see the New World being something introduced further down the line because they got the cross data center. They got cross world, which is huge, cross data center, which was massive. They don't have the cross region yet set up in place. The last I was aware, but they've just upgraded the hardware this week, and so you're probably going to see that march to more of this technology. And if it doesn't make it in for 7.0, that's not a big issue. But just knowing that that's something that, like, in terms of like things that they could still say, like that they're working on, and 8.0 massive news announcement. It's a mega server now, and we're going to fill the open world with the players, and it's just going to handle itself, like in Blue Protocol, like in Destiny, like in the new modern MMO, which is like, we're just going to handle it for you, and you just go off and play. I think then you start to kind of build in, that excitement again, because then it gives you as a designer way more options. Because one of the things you don't want is design content, especially in the open world, that nobody can participate in because nobody's there. And you're like, okay, well, how do I do this? And WoW did that eventually. Like WoW has that, and there's pros and cons, but that is in and of itself what it is. But yeah, it's definitely a big ask. Let's not sit here and say like, oh, easy breezy, let's get it done. But man, I tell you, I would be thrilled.
Cool. Well, I'm gonna get back to this New World patch.
Woohoo!
Having fun with the season pass here. In the background, there's drops going on. The drops are tied to like 20 hours of hanging out with us on Twitch. So what I can tell you is it is Tuesday, April 4th, and I will play a minimum of 20 hours of New World this week. There's no way it's less than that. That way, if people keep it tuned here, you'll be covered.
Yep. And I'll be live as well to help you guys make sure you get those hours, those drops. So we have till May the 4th, but so countdown 1 month. However, let's see if we can get it knocked out for you guys as soon as possible. So I'll try to be live tonight. Be sure to be engaged in the Discord. So I'll ping you guys if I'm live. So that way we can hopefully chip off a couple more hours towards those drops themselves. And we do appreciate you guys for hitting that follow, for lurking on the streams. Like that is a great way that you can kind of help us continue to do what we're doing right here, which is these podcasts, these breakdowns, and so much more. Now, on that note, I'm going to hit end broadcast over on the YouTube side of things. So if you want to continue your day and unlock these drops, and if you're not over on Twitch, follow the links. And otherwise, we will see you in